Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the special pop-up business behind the scenes. I'm Brenda Lewis, Senior Member Relations Manager here at the Tulsa Regional Chamber, and I'm pleased to welcome you guys today welcome you all today. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our generous sponsors who make events like possible. I'm gonna share my screen here. Our business behind the scenes sponsors are Blue Cross Blue Shield of Oklahoma, Exceptional Leaders Lab, Stride Bank, Southwestern Payroll, and TEDC Creative Capital. Again, I'd like to thank these sponsors for their generous support. I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, Elli Johannsson with 360 Engineering Group, Principal and Founder. 360 Engineering Group provides comprehensive structural engineering solutions for a wide variety of clients and projects. Since its founding, the company has grown to have offices in Tulsa, Oklahoma City, and Manhattan, Kansas. The firm has also been involved in some of Tulsa's landmark projects, including the Tulsa City County Library, the Tulsa Club Hotel, the Box Yard, and Gathering Place. Elli has more than 28 years in architectural engineering and construction field and was named the Chamber's 2020 Small Business Person of the Year at last year's Tulsa Small Business Summit and Awards. Before I hand it over, I want to encourage our audience to send questions through the Q&A feature of Zoom. We'll get to these for a Q&A after the presentation. Elli, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll now pass it over to you.
Thank you, Brenda. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the opportunity to give you kind of behind the scenes here with 360 Engineering. Been grateful to join the Small Business Connection and been honored with the Small Business Person of the Year for 2020, which with everything going on, I think it's even a more special honors. So thank you, everybody. And really enjoyed the camaraderie and hearing from others, look forward to doing a lot more of that in person rather than on Zoom and online. So, but yeah, with that, I'll kind of give you a little bit of kind of background on myself and the company and kind of how we got started and where we're at and where we're going. So again, my name is Elli Johannsson, co-founded 360 Engineering 2013 with a business partner, Aaron Landrum. As we worked together at a previous company. I had kind of always had, as I graduated college, that there's about a 4 to 5 year licensure track to get your license. And so the idea was to get licensed and then kind of start doing something on my own. Well, 10 years passed by and then 15 years passed by. And I was like, well, it's probably kind of time to, if I'm going to give this a try, to actually do this. Pushing back a little bit earlier on, I was born and raised in Iceland. Went through high school there. Kind of always had a little bit of restlessness and had a paper route. Kind of had an entrepreneurial or kind of a little bit of energy about just instead of just watching things go by. I remember there was a grocery store across the street or in my neighborhood. About 13 years old or so, went and applied for a summer job there, and they kind of looked at me and was like, well, probably have to be a little heavier, weigh a little more than the bags you have to carry or move around here. So they said, why don't you wait a couple of years and come back? That didn't happen, but as I kind of found myself trying different things and just not accepting the sitting around a status quo, so kind of that energy and always wanted to do that entrepreneurial kind of a journey. As I went through college, had some side jobs and things like that. I worked in construction. That's what got me interested in the architectural and engineering field. I was going to become an electrician before going to college, but kind of paths changed along the way, and went through the kind of building industry and working in construction kind of really led me through that. Went through Tulsa Community College, which I think was just a great journey for me. I was kind of adapting to the language, culture, everything like that. Found that to be a very rewarding program to go through, and I know quite several people from the Business Connection have kind of been honored through that program and gone through it. Went to school at Oklahoma State University, a great program right there, made some great friends and connections, and as I graduated and started working, there's that same kind of restlessness of kind of the 8 to 5 kind of wasn't quite enough. Went, did some real estate stuff, residential houses, did some flips, stuff like that, but found that to be quite a nuisance or a burden, and didn't quite satisfy that. So as that is kind of building through it, wanted to do something on my own, and had kind of done some projects here and there, off and on, to help out with people. So with smaller projects, but that built to the kind of the relationships over time, and how people say, it's like, well, how did you get to the point of success? And it was those relationships when I was 16, 17 years old. There was contractors we were working with today that I was, cleaning out houses or things like that at 16, 17, and in college, making those connections with classmates and as early on. So these are relationships that formed over years and years and years. And there's no such thing as an overnight success. It's an overnight success, 20, 30 years in the making. So that's kind of helped us really get a good footing, and started out fairly strong with a good client base that's really been loyal with us. And Weldon Bowman is one that got introduced to the small business connection. It's been a great client and a friend that we've kind of grown at similar pace, started at a similar time frame, and grown at similar pace. So it's been joyful to see that success and going along the way over the last 8 years or so, 7, 8 years. I kind of got my story of kind of where I came from and how we got there. A little bit, kind of a quick insight, or kind of where we're at with 360. Started out here in Tulsa. My business partner, as I mentioned, Aaron Landrum, we started in the back of an insurance office. There was a friend of ours that had a couple of empty desks that we had bought laptops on a credit card. I had a line of credit that we bought, our home line of credit that we bought, or paid for our professional insurance, as that was our largest expense. We'd saved up a little bit of money and started with that, and quickly found ourselves having more work than we knew what to do with, or could do ourselves. Moved into the back of a garage on 15th Street. It was a space my father had. That was less than ideal for professional office. Our first employee started, I think, in the first or second week of January, and it turned out to be one of the coldest days that Tulsa had had on record for like 50 years, and found ourselves to have very inadequate heating and air conditioning systems. So that didn't last very long, but kind of one of those fun items along the journey that, would have been a little bit better planned, but it's part of who we are, part of our DNA, and you just kind of adapt, move on, and move to the next one. We've moved, we were on 3rd Street here in Tulsa, kind of in the East Village here down the street from Bohemian and Hodges Bend. Been a great location for us. We've got about 14, 15 people in the Tulsa office. We had opened up an Oklahoma City office. An employee wanted to move back, be closer to family. They were starting a family themselves, had their roots in Oklahoma City, and moved there. So, and started out kind of with the co-working spaces, which was just a fantastic opportunity with low cost, low risk, being allow somebody to do that. And that's grown up to an office of about 7 people right now. And similar scenario for our Manhattan, Kansas office. Probably wouldn't have been a location we would picked ideally, but it's turned out to have been a great opportunity. Got an employee there, transfer, spouse had a transfer of job. That's what their family is. That's what their support system. They've got 3 little boys, and so it's great to see them kind of be able to have that opportunity. And so instead of looking at these things where an employee wants to do something as a negative, you kind of turn it into, okay, how can we make this the best, and how can we kind of make this a green light scenario and move forward. So, and the Manhattan, Kansas office has served as a great opportunity for us for recruiting. That's with the Kansas State University is. They have an excellent engineering program right there. So, these are just things. And we have another remote employee in upstate New York, in Ithaca area. So when there's stuff on the East Coast, they're able to get to that and kind of serve our clients better. We're, like I say, about 25 total people. We do primarily our work here is in Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas area. But we have a handful of clients that do stuff kind of nationwide. So we're licensed in, I want to say about 45 states or so. I think done everything from, the Northeast to Hawaii and all across, with the majority of our stuff here locally. So I think we've completed in the last 7-8 years here, 4,500 projects. Did about 600 to 700 projects. Well, this is probably going to be our best year this year. I think we'll be on track to be about 1,000 projects, and some of those could be smaller opinions and investigations, but then anything up to campus-wide projects. And I'll kind of do a little slideshow at the end to give some images as hearing an engineer droning on and about our buildings is probably not the most exciting thing. A little visualization would definitely help with that. What sets us apart from our competitors, I think, is just kind of creativity. Looking at, or like to say, is we bring clarity where others see chaos, simplifying things, being able to execute a vision or a dream or a proposal that a client has. How can we get to that endpoint quicker, faster, more creatively? How is this done that others aren't able to see a solution than we can? One of the things we say about being able to be responsive, it's the only consistent thing is change, so better be good at dealing with it. So whether it's through how we set up projects, how we do accounting, how we do kind of the whole process that infuses itself through the company culture, being able to kind of adapt, instead of saying, well, man, you really changed this, we're just going to set us back 2 to 3 weeks or back to square one. What can we salvage? How can we move forward? And that's really been a key part of our success, I believe, or that's what we hear from clients, to be able to adapt, think on the spot, and be outside thinking and outside the box thinking, creativity. And as you mentioned earlier, some of the projects we worked on, been very fortunate to work on some landmark projects here in Tulsa, some of ongoing or stuff that's on the books right now as well. And we kind of credit our success to that responsiveness, creativity, and provide solutions where others see problems. So with that, I think some of the key challenges like we're facing right now, and I think a lot of the construction and the design industry is facing, is manpower. We're very fortunate to have quite a bit of work, and I know a lot of the people in the group in hospitality and restaurant and events and entertainment industries are suffering, and really hopefully that's going to kick up really going to take off here pretty soon. Really looking forward to that. I know I miss going to concerts, miss going to games, miss going to the BOK Center. But in our industry right now, and hopefully we're the leading indicator of there's so much activity and so much stuff being built that 6 to 8 months from now, there's really going to be a boom on the attendance side and actually enjoying that, not just blocked off roads and cranes blocking streets. So that's kind of our biggest challenge right now. So our big focus has been on our employees, on our people, make sure not just the work needs are met, and not just given a raise and a bonus and that sort of stuff, but what are you really checking in with them? What are their needs? What can we do to really meet those and see kind of what your path is? I know that's a lot of companies do the annual check-ins and kind of the performance reviews, that sort of stuff. We try to do a lot more broken down, kind of a quarterly or much more smaller based check-in. So, and the analogy I use, if you take your wife or partner or spouse on a date once a year, it's going to be a pretty crappy year. So let's touch base, because in reality, it's a different kind of a relationship, but it still is a relationship at the end of it. So if you're not hearing what's going on and being to meet those needs, or at least being aware of those needs, then things go sour on that. So that's the biggest challenge, to be able to keep up with the demands. And I'm trying to think of, I know certainly are some others just kind of growing as we've gone from, started with a couple of people. If 2 years in, we're about 5 people, and now we're up to 25. So the kind of the infrastructure and the management changes. More of the documentation. We've been working with HR consulting firm to kind of document some of our processes and systems and bring it where it's just not be my partner to kind of follow up on those things, because they'll just quickly kind of fall by the wayside as you're putting out the next challenge or next fire or next proposal, or trying to get the next project. So establishing that leadership team within, bringing people on board. We've announced 3 associate principals, which is kind of the principals and the associate principals, the leadership team, and kind of define the vision, where are we going, do the strategic planning, and kind of finding out all the things we need to do to execute that. So that's a really exciting opportunity to bring people along, hearing the different visions, seeing the different thought processes, having that diversity of thought has been excellent and kind of eye-opening. And some of the things that, you kind of just in your mind think, well, this is where we're going, but as you're being questions about it and kind of having to verbalize and think through it, it's been really, really interesting to see that process. And I really look forward to the next 3 to 5 years as we bring those on as full partners to the company. That's going to be just an exciting journey and go through, and be interesting. No big picture where it's going, but certainly will be a great process for us. Trying to think of some of the kind of broader items, as we're kind of describing structural engineering. A lot of times when people ask me what we do, and there's like, oh yeah, structural engineering, that sounds interesting. And there's not a lot of but kind of a visualization of what that means, or what that happens. As you can see, the Golden Gate Bridge there behind Brenda, a great feat of structural engineering, and being in the Bay Area, an iconic image. And you see this around with whether it's sculptures or high rises and things like that, how these monuments, or whether they're buildings or not, are really defined cities or locations and places. So, and something needs to, the Golden Gate Bridge, I don't know how old it is, needs to stand the test of time and all the loads and the stresses. So in broad sense of it, the architect or the developer kind of has a big picture idea, or has a design and aesthetic and our part is we make it stand up, but we make it hold up and to stand the test of time. So you see, we'll just on the call, but you see Weldon's red signs all over town. He comes up with the aesthetics, the functionality, how it works, and kind of we help him out with putting enough concrete or rebar or steel in those to hold them up. And a lot of these older, the renovation or rejuvenation of downtown here in Tulsa and around the region makes it a lot more challenging of how do you preserve the aesthetics of some of these older buildings and also preserve the budget. More importantly, how you just are not tearing everything down and rebuilding with the latest and greatest, but how to be able to do that effectively and efficiently. So Tulsa Club's a great example. A lot of the stuff in the Brady area that certainly have been challenges, but but they've kind of got that old character. They've got that feel that you can't just quite replicate in a new building. So interesting. I don't know if they're those who haven't been to it, but the Holberton Coding School on North Cheyenne was an excellent project. An older gym that kind of looked like the from the dodgeball movie. There's a gym called Average Joe's. That's basically what I prescribed that going into that before, but how that's been transformed, adding a floor. There was some pretty high tech for its age structural framing systems, some cables that for stuff that was done in the teens and the 20s. And now that that's being adapted to a technology program, high tech, and kind of be able to marry that, but seeing some of the older characteristics, a lot of exposed structure, everything kind of open. There's not much stuff that's hidden behind walls. So those are really exciting opportunities to be able to work around. And like I said, we do office buildings, commercial restaurants, schools, hospitals, casinos, churches, kind of a little bit of everything. But some of the kind of more unique ones is when a large concert comes to the BOK Center or another venue, they will, all the stage equipment, all the lights, all the speakers kind of get hung from the ceiling, and we get involved with that to kind of check that the arrangement of loads and configuration it doesn't exceed the capacity. It's a safe environment. So that's been kind of a really neat thing to do. I know I'm a big U2 fan, and as the U2 concert came here in Tulsa a couple of years ago, I was just proud to be able to have a very, very small part in helping out with that, as the 360 name was derived from the 360 U2 tour that came in Norman, I think in 2008 or so. So there's a nice little connection to be able to connect with that. And had the opportunities, which is kind of examples of stuff as we go through a lot of these facilities. Always amazed to see how much stuff's being made in Tulsa. We do a lot of industrial work. So when you go into, I know I'd always heard about the aerospace industry here in Tulsa, and you think of the large one, Spirit Aerosystems and Nordam and things like that, but seeing all the side businesses that come from that and support businesses. And I had no idea until kind of, being on the ground and seeing all the support businesses that go around that, flight safety, and there's just tons and tons of others. So that gives me a lot of joy to go out there and I spend a decent amount of time in the office, but I go out on site quite a bit and look at that and seeing the diversity of workforce, type of industries that are around, and new businesses that are popping up all over the region and the area. So that's kind of the fun part to me, to go out on and seeing the stuff kind of in person and seeing what's going around and kind of working on these items, and restaurants or developments and things like that. And kind of it's a 1 year, 2 year, sometimes 3 year long process to make that happen. But as it comes to fruition, and as we've done some stuff at the Gathering Place, we've done stuff at the zoo, Mother Road Market, things like that, that seeing the throngs of people being able to enjoy it and having a small part of making that come to reality. I think of here some of
I was going to say, Elli, if you could show us some of those really cool pictures you had. I think there were renderings or the projects that I mentioned earlier and that you've even touched on. It'd be neat to see images for maybe those of us that are not familiar.
Yeah, and I'm switching over right now. You would think. And is that showing up for everybody? Okay, all right, excellent. So here's our logo. There it goes. one of the things that's really interesting to see right now, all the activity going on in the Brady area. I used to work in the Brady area when Spaghetti Warehouse was open. So I think the lunch options were Spaghetti Warehouse and close my mind right now, the Mexican place, and just a handful of places down there, and see how that's transformed. Been fortunate to be part of some of those projects, and the one that's kind of really moving fast right now and trying to get open for the Juneteenth celebration, or the centennial celebration or remembrance of Black Wall Street, or the Greenwood Rising, is the Greenwood Rising Museum. You can see the image right here. It'll be a really kind of a neat exterior facade. You can see some of the penetrations and the holes in the exterior wall there. And there's going to be backlit with some LED lights, very large overhang there. And that area has really been coming together for a while now. It started, I think, with some of those apartments, and of course the ballpark and the kind of rejuvenation of that area. But that's kind of to me, the kind of the key thing that ties all of it together, and some of the office and just seeing, once all the construction fencing and trucks go out of as things get finished up, seeing the liveliness and kind of bringing that back to kind of its original roots there. And if you've driven down the BA, there's the TTC, Tulsa Technology Center, the Lemley campus. They're building their client service center. We did that. It's a large, about a 250,000 square foot project. And these are some of the images as it's kind of getting in the finishing touches on that. Been a project in the works for quite some time. And large projects, it's got storm shelters, all sorts of things, a very large lobby entry space. And it's interesting how TTC does so much with those industries that I mentioned before. And I kind of always thought of it as just kind of a more of a classroom teaching type of stuff, but just it's amazing how much else they do for the region. Some more images of that space, world-class facility, and like I say, we're just proud to be part of that and make that vision come to life. The WPX building. So one of the things that sets us apart a little bit from others, we did not do the engineering for the whole building. We just kind of do the exterior facade. We do that kind of all over the country, a lot of it here locally. But allows us to kind of be part of and put our little touch on some of these landmark projects in the area. OK Pop, WPX, and others. Just a long list of others. Almost all the casino projects that we're able to provide some of that creative out-of-box thinking to meet some of these very fast and demanding schedules, and some of the kind of the truly unique architecture, some of the tilted walls, slanted walls that we're able to kind of get really into the weeds and the nuts and bolts, and provide a not only economical, but probably most importantly is kind of something that can be built quickly, and because timing is so critical, especially right now with increased commodity prices, and everybody when steel and wood and material prices are going up 10 or 11% per month, getting it done quickly really makes a big difference. So that has really been challenge for us to kind of keep up with everybody wanting it right now, but been able to step up to this challenge so far. Another project here that you wouldn't think kind of normally normally we don't do a whole lot under the structural engineering umbrella is artwork. We've done some sculptures, and with the newly renovated Cox Convention Center, there's been a plaza. renovated outside of there, and this art sculpture has just recently been completed and installed, and will be, I think, commemorated. I believe it's this Friday. So worked with the artist to help develop that, and then provide the support to get the cranes in there. You think about, how do you bring in this in a when you're landlocked by buildings, parking garages, plazas that have kind of been not kept up to date, maybe in the best shape they could have. Discussions and serious discussions were had about bringing in a helicopter to drop these, to bring these in. That did not, we were able to make it work with some creativity with the artists, with the city, with some of the key stakeholders there, the police department, and just the amount of complexity it takes to bring this in. And but it's going to be a really neat, or it is a really neat installation, and just help them be able to help some of those logistics and solve those problems. Is a kind of a, not our daily type of stuff, but I was personally involved with that project, and it's going to be one of those things that's going to be here for quite a while. And as the Cox Convention Center ramps back up, hopefully that'll be a great focal point for us, and for us citizens of Tulsa, residents of Tulsa, and visitors alike. Some of the other projects, I mentioned some of these earlier. Mother Road Market, project we did several years ago. Box Yard down here on 3rd Street, been a successful project. And, during the construction of that, we were getting pushback from the developer and the contractor. You're putting too much wood, you're putting too much steel, you're putting too much concrete. As I think it was a couple of years ago, as Tulsa Tough, the finish line ended right in front of the box yard, and the viewing decks up there were just packed full of people. And we're seeing the owner there across the street or walking up there, and he just looks like, well, I'm glad you were part of the project. It's standing up. We've got hundreds of jumping fans up here, and everything's worked well. So we never want to have any issues, but it's good to see that full, in live person load testing, and certainly past that. And so interesting thing on that. Tulsa Botanic Garden, the Maybe Grange building, does some other work out there. It's just a beautiful facility. If people haven't had a chance to look at that. I think I've got maybe one more slide here. Yeah, some of the central library, same at that plaza. That was a project we did a couple of years ago, but beautiful architecture, kind of modern style that was kind of renovated back from the original, some of the original photographs from the 60s when it was opened. And as through the years, it had kind of been filled up with just all sorts of stuff, and some of the original items had kind of went through the basement and into storage, and really kind of brought that back to its original kind of life and function. So I think that's all I have here, kind of from sharing images. I'm certainly open to taking any sort of questions or comments that anybody may have.
Thank you, Elli, so much for that. And I did not know that 360 was named after a really fun event. I was going to ask you that question. So I would like to open actually the Q&A to our audience, pardon me. So you can find that function at the bottom of Zoom. But Elliot did have a question that I wanted to start off with. What did it mean to you, or what does it mean to you to have been chosen as the Tulsa Chamber Small Business Person of the Year in 2020?
That's a great question. Yeah, no, it certainly meant that, being a part of a group of business owners that really respected, admired, being chosen from a group like that was a big honor. And as I've kind of been so much more, working in the business instead of kind of working on the business, it kind of in that transition. So kind of recognition for that. I think probably the main thing that really stood out for me with that was the same thing of kind of turning, as I mentioned earlier, taking a positive or taking a negative and turning it into a positive, how it wasn't in person, it was online. It was a little bit different than in the past, but as I mentioned, I grew up in Iceland and have a family there, close family. So having it online, they were able to watch that video, watch the presentation in real time. It wasn't something that I sent them a snip or a picture later. And kind of as I mentioned about, you kind of describe, you tell people you're a structural engineer and you kind of get that glazed look, and just doing that with somebody you don't see on a regular basis, translating that to a different language. I don't know how often my grandmother's asked me, so what is it you do again? So being able to see that visualization or having that, be able to share that real moment was just a really great experience. And certainly the recognition from peers and community in the community was amazing. But I think that's the one that's going to really stick with me for a very long time.
That is such a really, really positive outlook, and turning a negative to a positive, where your family just across the globe was able to tune into a special moment. I did want to pass along some very kind words from our audience. They love your creativity. The projects are amazing, and congratulations on being the Small Business Person of the Year. What has been your favorite project and why? A two-part question. And then also, what has been the most challenging? So what's been your favorite project and why, and which project has been the most challenging?
I would think probably favorite project. It's been a little while ago, but during the state centennial, 2007, there was the Pearl Harbor, USS Pearl Harbor Memorial for the USS Oklahoma. Was designed here in Oklahoma, and I worked as the engineer for designing that. Kind of being part of the state centennial, we'd worked on the Oklahoma History Center and kind of been part of some of those things. But my father, who's in the construction business and in the marble and granite, he ended up was the winning bid for the project. So I worked with him, or initially did the design for it, but then worked with him to kind of help develop it and implement how to actually do that. But then got to spend 2 weeks out in the field with him to build it. So it was kind of the full circle of concept design, working through that, the testing and the implementation here locally, but then going out and working out in Hawaii for a couple of weeks was just an amazing experience to kind of go the full 360 circle on that and seeing that through and kind of being humbled by it was a good kind of shake up for me of, you spend time in the office and you draw it on paper and you work out the numbers, and here this is simple, go build it. But seeing the challenges of doing that, and this is being out in the sun and nice weather and being in Hawaii, having a perfect background, but the challenge is what it takes to execute that vision is just as important as the lines on paper that we do as engineers and architects. The second question is most challenging. Wow, that's a good one. There's been lots of those. I would say probably the most challenging is one we're kind of working on right now is the Gilcrease Museum, just due to the history and the legacy of the collection, how to make that a world-class museum, and working with a nationally known architect that does a lot of museum work all over the world and on the national mall. So having to bring that vision to life and some of the really neat design aspects of that, I think that's probably the most challenging one so far. So
I appreciate your honesty on that. We got another great question come in. Was there an inflection point or an event / project that was notable that helped transform going from a small firm to a larger firm? I know you had a wonderful garage this?
So yeah, I think the inflection point was probably kind of coming from that 5 to 6 people, and now I'll mention get into that a little bit more. So when we're at that 5 to 6 person size, we were kind of almost had a cap at the size of projects we could do, and as we hit that ceiling, we were on that bordering of, well, do we, some opportunities came along, and do we go after those, or do we put our name in the hat for that and chase that? And it wasn't as much of a hard, fast decision and a plan for it. Some of it was going to happen organically and kind of came along. And as those, at the same time, some of those opportunities were presented themselves, some additional staff came on board, and so there was basically the point of, okay, are we going to stay at this 5, 6, 7 people, or are we going to go kind of to the next level, and how are we going to do that? And by being able to allow our employees to be more flexible and move into different locations. So I can't think of like a one specific item, but I certainly do remember that point of, yeah, in order to do this, I can't be ordering checks, and I can't be doing this sort of stuff. I've got to delegate, and we've got to create some infrastructure around that. And that was and kind of almost just having that thought process of, if the process isn't working for us today, then it's certainly not going to work for us for a year from now. Kind of thinking through that and thinking ahead, even though it may be a little more cumbersome now, this will allow us to kind of go through those changes. That was kind of a longer, more convoluted answer to that question, but.
Well, actually, it's a great lead into another question that I had. What advice would you give to a person that is wanting to start a business in Tulsa or the surrounding area?
I would think, or my advice has been kind of being on the conservative side for financially. We, like I said, we did, credit cards and that sort of stuff, but I think having those resources to weather the storm. As most business owners know, kind of cash is king. We have been incredibly fortunate on that side of things, that we've got such a diversity of clients and so many types of industries we work in. We have not had major dips or really things that have caused us in a major financial burden like that. We've had some backup plans for that. So I would think being able to kind of, because it takes a while for that kind of you kind of need that runway to get started and kind of get the cash flowing and things moving in. So have that. I know there's a tremendous amount of resources in Tulsa, whether it's through Forge. I know some of them are not thinking of them off the top of my head right now.
36 degrees north.
Yeah, 36 degrees north. Should remember that being very close to 360. Tulsa Emerging 100 is an amazing organization, and there's just a tremendous amount of resources and mentorship. And I would think kind of the fun was, thinking of it from, we have been very lucky, but I certainly looking back on to think of, there were just 1 or 2 steps that would have gone differently, that would have been a completely different story for us. So so for that, and then reaching out to those community and local resources, because there's just an amazing group of entrepreneurs and business leaders around that are always willing to, or my experience, have always been willing to be helpful and be there for somebody.
I would have to agree with that. And specifically to the chamber, how has your involvement with the Tulsa Chamber helped you professionally or personally?
Personally, I'd probably, the biggest thing for me has been the exposure to kind of, or both professionally and personally, but just being exposure around other business owners, is kind of seeing how they manage and kind of seeing some of their tools and things that they're using, kind of seeing that different leadership style. But I think personally is, being from Iceland and being in engineering, the EQ is does not tend to track people with very high Qs or very outgoing kind of personalities. So for me, that being breaking outside of that shell a little bit, public speaking, certainly not something that I've ever been good at or attracted to, or in more explicit terms, ran the other way from. So through this small business person and kind of getting out there a little bit more, doing talks like this. I did a fireside chat the other day, talked to a local group. So kind of getting to a space that's a little more uncomfortable and realizing that headphones dropped off. So little things to work on. But trying some stuff that wouldn't normally be in my normal wheelhouse and doing that and doing a better job of it.
Well, I appreciate you stepping out into that for today's presentation. What keeps you inspired? What keeps you motivated? Is there a routine that you do every day or on a weekly basis?
I think the inspiration a lot of just comes from travel, seeing and travel could be, regionally and globally, but just seeing how others are doing what's being done. You can kind of get sometimes stuck in the rut of, okay, we've done this type of project, we've done this, let's do it 50 more times. And it's easier and kind of less challenging. But then when you go see some of the amazing architecture, regionally, you go to the Crystal Bridges Museum, and they're like, oh wow, we can really do a lot better. Or kind of getting inspired, but there's some amazing work going on. The Gathering Place has just been amazing to see the level of detail and functionality and everything going on there. People kind of walk into that area and they may not see it from the perspective I see it, and kind of the nuts and bolts, but there's kind of an awe factor of what the emotions and what reaction and what experience that goes through. So yeah, seeing great work or seeing higher quality and kind of something that evokes emotions, and then try to bring that back, and how can we do better, and how can we get to a little higher level.
Right. And this actually leads into my next question. You're helping me actually a lot, Elli. With your travel, what makes Tulsa, when you come back here, let's say you do travel globally, what makes Tulsa a unique place to start a business?
I think it's a great question, but I would think that it is a growing city, and it is I think a lot more forgiving in certain ways. There's not that kind of as ruthless or fast pace of just get it done or you get run over. There's a little bit of more of a cushion right there. There certainly is competition and people are moving forward, but I think there's a broader, kind of a little better perspective on it's just not all about the finances, making more money, doing this, growing, that sort of stuff. And you can see that kind of mirror in the how big the philanthropic community in Tulsa is. There's the kind of that balance to it, and as I mentioned earlier, kind of how many resources are for entrepreneurs. So I think that support and kind of a little bit of patience, I guess, for lack of a better word, would be there. So, but with the growth of renovation and everything like that, I think there's just more retail, more tech, more things, and more industries coming in and kind of diversifying outside of the older view oil and gas and aerospace, there's a lot more opportunities, and just it's amazing to hear all the different businesses and what they're doing. And you think, I never would have even thought of that as a product or a business or a service, but seeing that and the diversity of thought and people that are coming here from all over the place.
And my last question here for you before we conclude is, what are you most excited about for this year? We're almost halfway through. What are you most excited about?
I am most excited to. That's a great question. I think probably to get out and being around people, whether it's Tulsa Tough, concerts, things like that, to kind of get back to the normal. There's a part of me that is kind of the introvert that likes the isolation, or kind of being at the office and or kind of having that quiet time to recharge. But no, I think just the interactions on a kind of a larger scale, and seeing the community, and especially with some of the stuff that has been happening over the last couple of years. And so I mentioned Gathering Place and all these amenities and features we have, it feels like we've just kind of not been able to take full advantage of them. So that's what I'm really excited about it. And just seeing the diversity increasing in Tulsa, age, ethnicity, just come down to the not just food, but just everything, and the diversity of thought. We're really excited to see that. I think that's something I haven't seen, or certainly not in the types that I'm seeing it right now. And I know I've got a younger daughter, or two daughters, one older that's graduated, but a younger, to kind of have her going through that experience in a city that represents that just there isn't this part of town that kind of the central core, and just to be kind of or right now kind of seeing the blending point of that and the Gathering Place, just kind of how we're all getting a broader, comprehensive feel for the life in the city. So.
Well, thank you, Elli, so much for taking this time to tell us your story, to talk a little bit more about 360 Engineering Group, and really taking us into where you started and where you are, and the exciting projects you have to come. I know some are not even open quite yet, so we'll keep our eyes and ears out for when that happens. And thank you all for joining us today. Again, a big thank you to our generous sponsors who make events like today's possible.